What's going on, guys? It is officially spooky season, and to commemorate it, we'll be reading Five Nights at Freddy's. It is a small series of short novella-like sinister stories. So let's see how this plays out. I hear they're quite scary, so if you're easy to fright, maybe don't tune into this one. And as always, if you haven't done so already, hit that like button and subscribe. Now, let's get right to it. I don't know how dramatic I'll get, but we'll figure it out along the way, won't we? Now, let's see. It's the first time I do a reading in the dark, so this should be fun. Into the pit. The dead possum's still there. Oswald was looking out the passenger window at the great furry corpse on the side of the road. Somehow it looked even deader than it had yesterday. Last night's raid hadn't helped. Nothing looks deader than a dead possum, Oswald's dad said. Except this town, Oswald mumbled, looking at the boarded up storefronts and the display windows, which were displaying nothing but dust. What's that? Dad said. He was already wearing the stupid red vest they put him in when he worked the deli counter at the snack space. Oswald wished he'd wait to put it on until after he dropped him at school. This town, Oswald said louder this time, this town looks deader than a dead possum. His dad laughed. Well, I don't guess I can argue with that. 3 years ago, when Oswald was 7, there had actually been stuff to do here. A movie theater, a gaming card store, and an ice cream shop with amazing waffle cones. But then the mill had closed. The mill had basically been the reason the town existed. Oswald's dad had lost his job, and so had hundreds of other kids' moms and dads. Lots of families had moved away, including Oswald's best friend, Ben, and his family. Oswald's family had stayed because his mom's job at the hospital was steady, and they didn't want to move far away from Grandma. So Dad ended up with a part-time job at the snack space, which paid $5 an hour, less than he'd made at the mill. And Oswald watched the town die. One business after another shut down, like the organs in a dying body, because nobody had the money for movies or games or amazing waffle cones anymore. Are you excited it's the last day of school? Dad asked. It was one of those questions adults always asked, like, how was your day? And did you brush your teeth? Oswald shrugged. I guess. But there's nothing to do when Ben's gone. School's boring, but home's boring too. When I was 10, I wasn't home in the summer until I got called in for supper, Dad said. I rode my bike and played baseball and got into all kinds of trouble. Are you saying I should get into trouble? Oswald said. No, I'm saying you should have fun. Dad pulled into the drop-off line in front of Westbrook Elementary. Have fun. He made it sound so easy. Oswald walked through the school's double doors and ran smack into Dylan Cooper, the last person he wanted to see. Oswald was apparently the first person Dylan wanted to see, though, because his mouth spread in a wide grin. Dylan was the tallest kid in 5th grade and clearly enjoyed looming over his victims. Well, if it isn't Oswald the Ocelot, he said, his grin spreading impossibly wider. That one never gets old, does it? Oswald walked past Dylan and was relieved when his tormentor chose not to follow him. When Oswald and his 5th grade classmates were preschoolers, there was a cartoon on one of the little kid channels about a big pink ocelot named Oswald. As a result, Dylan and his friends had started calling him Oswald the Ocelot on the first day of kindergarten and had never stopped. Dylan was the kind of kid who'd pick on anything that made you different. If it hadn't been Oswald's name, it would have been his freckles or his cowlick. The name calling had gotten much worse this year in U.S. history when they learned that the man who shot John F. Kennedy was named Lee Harvey Oswald. Oswald would rather be an ocelot than an assassin. Since it was the last day of school, there was no attempt at doing any kind of real work. Mrs. Meacham had announced the day before that students were allowed to bring their electronics as long as they took responsibility for anything getting lost or broken. This announcement meant that no effort would be made toward any educational activities of any kind. Oswald didn't have any modern electronics. True, there was one laptop at home, but the whole family shared it, and he wasn't allowed to bring it to school. He had a phone, But it was the saddest, most out-of-date model imaginable, and he didn't want to take it out of his pocket because he knew any kid who saw it would make fun of how pathetic it was. So while other kids played games on their tablets or handheld consoles, Oswald sat. After just sitting became intolerable, he took out a notebook and pencil and started to draw. He wasn't the best artist in the world, but he could draw well enough that his images were identifiable. And there was a certain cartoony quality about his drawings that he liked. The best thing about drawing, though, was that he could get lost in it. It was like he fell into the paper and became part of the scene he was creating. It was a welcome escape. He didn't know why, but lately he had been drawing mechanical animals, bears, bunnies, and birds. He imagined them being human-sized and moving with the jerkiness of robots in an old science fiction movie. They were furry on the outside, but the fur covered a hard metal skeleton filled with gears and circuits. Sometimes he drew the animals' exposed metal skeletons or sketched them with the fur peeled back to show some of the mechanical workings underneath. It was a creepy effect, like seeing a person's skull peering out from beneath the skin. Oswald was so immersed in his drawings that he was startled when Mrs. Meekum turned off the lights to show a movie. Movies always seem like a teacher's final act of desperation on the day before break, a way to keep the kids quiet and relatively still for an hour and a half before setting them loose for the summer. The movie Mrs. Meekum chose was, in Oswald's opinion, too babyish for a room full of 5th graders. It was about a farm with talking animals, and he had watched it before, but he watched it again because really, what else did he have to do? At recess, kids stood around tossing a ball back and forth and talking about what they were going to do all over the summer. I'm going to football camp. I'm going to basketball camp. I'm going to hang out with my neighborhood pool. I'm going to stay with my grandparents in Florida. Oswald sat on a bench and listened. For him, there would be no camps and no pool membership and no trips because there was no money. And so he dropped pictures, play his old video games that he'd already beaten 1,000 times, and maybe go to the library. If Ben was still here, it would be different. Even if they were just doing the same old stuff, they'd be doing it together. And Ben could always make Oswald laugh, riffing on video game characters or doing a perfect impersonation of one of their teachers. He and Ben had fun no matter what they did. But now, a summer without Ben yawned before him, wide and empty. Most days, Oswald's mom worked from 12 p.m. until 12 a.m., so his dad had to make dinner. Usually, they got by on frozen meals with like lasagna or chicken pot pie, or on cold cuts and potato salad from the snack place deli that they were still good enough to eat but not good enough to sell. When Dad did cook, it was usually things that just required boiling water. While Dad got their dinner ready, Oswald's job was to feed Jinx, their very spoiled black cat. Oswald often thought that he used about the same amount of cooking skill in opening Jinx's can of stinky cat food as his dad used in his dinner preparations. Tonight, Oswald and Dad were sitting down to plates of blue box mac and cheese and some canned corn his dad had sapped in the microwave. It was a very yellow meal. You know, I was thinking, Dad said, squirting ketchup onto his macaroni and cheese. Why did he do that, Oswald whirled. I know you're old enough to stay at home by yourself, son. But I don't like the idea of you staying by yourself the whole day while your mom and I are at work. I was thinking you could ride into town with me in the mornings and I could drop you off at the library. You could read the Surf the Net. Oswald couldn't let this one slide. How out of date could his dad be? Nobody says surf the net anymore, Dad. They do now because I just said it. Dad worked up some macaroni. Anyway, I thought you could hang out in the library in the mornings. When you get hungry, you could head over to Jeff's Pizza for a slice and a soda. And I could pick you up there once my shift's over at 3. Oswald considered for a moment. Jeff's Pizza was kind of weird. It wasn't dirty exactly, but it was run down. The vinyl on the boot seats had been repaired with duct tape, and the plastic letters had fallen off the menu board above the counters, so the listed toppings included pepperoni and ugh. It wasn't clear that Jeff's Pizza used to be something bigger and better than it was now. There were tons of used floor space and lots of unused electrical outlets along the base of the walls. Also, on the far wall was a small stage. even though there were no performances there, not even so much as karaoke night. It was a strange place, sad and not what it had once been, like the rest of the town. That being said, the pizza was decent, but more important, it was only pizza in town, if you didn't count the kind of frozen food department at the snack space. The few good restaurants in town, including Gino's Pizza and Marco's Pizza, which, unlike Jeff's, had real pizza maker names, had closed their doors not long after the meal had. "So you'll give me the money for pizza?" Oswald asked. Since that job's loss, Oswald's allowance had dwindled to practically nothing. Dad smiled, a kind of sad smile, it seemed to Oswald. "Son, we're bad off, but we're not so bad off. I can spot you $3.50 for a slice and a soda." "Okay," Oswald said. It was hard to say no to a warm, gooey cheese slice. Since it wasn't a school night, and wouldn't be again for quite some time, Oswald stayed up after Dad went to bed and watched an old Japanese monster movie, with Jinx curled up, purring on his lap. Oswald had seen a lot of B-grade Japanese horror films, but not this one. Sendrix vs. Mecha Sendrix. It was new to him. As always, Sendrix just looked at the giant dragon thing, but Mecha Sendrix reminded him of the mechanical animals he drew when he stripped them off their fur. He laughed at the movie's special effects. The train Sendrix destroyed was clearly a toy, and at how the actors' lip movements didn't match the dubbed in English. Somehow though, he always found himself rooting for Sendrix, even though he was just a guy in a rubber suit. Somehow he managed to have a lot of personality. In bed, he tried to count his blessings. He didn't have Ben, but he had monster movies at the library, lunchtime pizza slices. It was better than nothing, but it still wasn't going to be enough to keep him going all summer. Please, he wished, his eyes closed tight, please let something interesting happen. Oswald woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. The coffee he could do without, but the bacon smelled amazing. Breakfast meant time with his mom, often the only time he got with her, until the weekend. After one necessary stop, he hurried down the hall to the kitchen. "Well, look at that, my rising sixth grader has risen." Mom was standing over the stove in her fussy pink bathrobe, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, flipping. "Oh, yum, were those pancakes?" "Hi, Mom." She opened her arms. "I demand the morning hug." Oswald sighed like it annoyed him, but he went over and hugged her. It was funny. With Dad, he always said he was too old for hugs, but he never turned down his mom's open arms. Maybe it was because he didn't get to spend much time with her during the week. While he and Dad spent so much time together, they sometimes got onto each other's nerves. He knew Mom missed him and felt bad for having to work such long hours, but he also knew that since Dad's job at the snack space was just part-time, Mom's long hours were most of the reason the bills were getting paid. Mom always said that an adult life was a fight between time and money. The more money you earned to spend on bills and necessities, the less time you got to spend with your family. It was a difficult balance. Oswald sat down at the kitchen table and thanked his mom when she poured his orange juice. "First day of summer break, huh?" Mom went back to the stove to scoop up a pancake with her spatula. "Mm-hmm." He probably should have tried to sound more enthusiastic, but he couldn't muster the energy. She slid the pancake onto his plate and served him 2 strips of bacon. "Not the same without Ben, huh?" He shook his head. He wasn't going to cry. Mom ruffled his hair. "I know. It's a bummer. But hey, maybe a new friend will move to town?" Oswald looked at her with a hopeful face. Why would anybody move here? "Okay, I see your point," Mom said, piling on another pancake. "But you never know. Or maybe somebody cool already lives here. Somebody you don't even know yet." "Maybe, but I doubt it," Oswald said. "These pancakes are great, though." Mom smiled and ruffled his hair again. "Well, I've got that going for me anyway. Do you want more bacon? If you do, you'd better grab it before your dad gets here and vacuums them all up." "Sure." It was Oswald's personal policy never to refuse more bacon. The library was actually kind of fun. He found the latest book in a science fiction series he liked, and the manga that looked interesting. As always, he had to wait forever to use the computers because they were all taken by people who looked like they had no place else to be. Men with scraggly beards wearing layers of ratty clothing, too thin women with sad eyes and bad teeth. He waited his turn politely, knowing that some of these people used the library for shelter during the day, then spent the night on the streets. Jeff's pizza was as weird as he remembered. The big empty space beyond the booths and tables was like a dance floor where nobody danced. The walls were painted a pale yellow, but they must have used cheap paint or only one coat because shapes of whatever had been on the wall before were still visible. It had probably been some kind of mural with people or animals, but now it was just shadows behind a thin veil of yellow paint. Oswald sometimes tried to figure out what the shapes were, but they were too blobby to make out. Then there was a stage that never got used, standing empty, but seemingly waiting for something. Though a feature even weirder than the stage lay in the back right corner. It was large rectangular pans surrounded by yellow netting, but it had been roped off with a sign that said, "Do not use." The pen itself was filled with red, blue, and green plastic balls that had probably been brightly colored once, but were now faded and fuzzy with dust. Oswald knew that ball pits had been popular features in kiddie playlands, but had largely disappeared because of concerns about hygiene. After all, who was going to disinfect all those balls? Oswald had no doubt that if ball pits had been popular when he was little, his moms wouldn't have let him play in one. As a licensed practical nurse, she was always happy to point out the places she found too germy to play in. And when Oswald would complain that she never let him have any fun, she'd say, "You know what's not fun? Pink eye." Except for the empty stage and the ball pit, the strangest feature in Jeff's Pizza was Jeff himself. He seemed to be the only person who worked there, so he both took orders at the counter and made the pizzas. But the place was never crowded enough that this was a problem. Today, like all other days, Jeff looked as if he hadn't slept in a week. His dark hair was sticking up in weird places, and he had alarming bags under his bloodshot eyes. His apron was stained with both recent and ancient tomato sauce. "What can I get you?" he asked Oswald, sounding bored. "A slice and an orange soda, please," Oswald said. Jeff stared off into the distance as though he had to think about whether the request was a reasonable one or not. Finally, he said, "Okay, $3.50. One thing you could say about Jeff's pizza slices, they were huge. Jeff served them on a flimsy white paper plates that were soon stained with grease, and the corners of the triangles always overlapped the plate's trims. Oswald settled into a booth with his slice and soda. The first bite, the tip of the triangle, was always the best. Somehow the proportions of all the flavors in that bite were perfect. He savored the warm, melty cheese, the tangy sauce, and the pleasantly greasy crust. As he ate, he looked around at the few other customers. A pair of mechanics from the oil change place had folded up their pepperoni slices and were eating them like sandwiches. A table full of office workers clumsily attacked their slices with plastic forks and knives so they wouldn't drip sauce on their ties and blouses, Oswald guessed. After Oswald finished his slice, he wished for one more, but he knew he didn't have the money for it. So he wiped off his greasy fingers and took out his library book. He sipped the soda and read, falling into a world where kids with secret powers went to a special school to learn how to fight evil. "Kid," a man's voice startled Oswald out of the story. He looked up to see Jeff in his sauce-stained apron. Oswald figured he had outstayed his welcome. He had sat in the booth reading for 2 hours after having bought a meal that cost less than $4. "Yes, sir," Oswald said, because politeness never hurt. "I got a couple more cheese slices that didn't sell at the lunch. You want them?" "Oh," Oswald said, "no thanks, I don't have any more money." He wished he did, though. "On the house," Jeff said. "I just have to throw them out anyways." "Oh, okay, sure, thanks." Jeff picked up Oswald's empty cup. "I'll get you some more orange soda while I'm at it." "Thanks." It was funny. Jeff's expression never changed. He looked tired and miserable, even when he was being extra nice. Jeff brought 2 slices stacked on a paper plate, and a fresh cup of orange soda. "Here you go, kid," he said, setting down the cup and plate. "Thank you." Oswald wondered for a minute if Jet felt sorry for him. If Jet might think he was terribly poor like the homeless people who hung out all day in the library instead of just the regular, barely making ends meet poor that he was. But then Oswald figured, if there was free pizza sitting in front of you, maybe it wasn't time to worry about the reasons for it. Maybe it was time to eat. Oswald had no problem polishing off the 2 huge slices. For the past month, his appetite had been unstoppable. When Mom cooked him piles of pancakes in the morning, she said he must be having a growth spurt, causing him to eat like he had a hollow leg. His phone vibrated in his pocket. The second he sucked down the last of his soda, he looked at his dad's text. "We'll be out front at Jeff's in 2 min." Perfect timing. It had been a good day. The days at the library and Jeff's Pizza started to add up. The first couple of weeks had been great, but now the library didn't have the next book in the series he was reading. And he had grown bored with his online fantasy game, which, while advertised as free, now wouldn't let him advance any further without paying money. He had gotten tired of not having anybody his age to hang out with. He hadn't gotten tired of pizza yet, but he was starting to imagine that he might in the future. Tonight was Family Fun Night, a 1 night a week event that varied depending on Mom's work schedule. Back when the mill was still open, Family Fun Night meant dinner in a restaurant, pizza or Chinese or Mexican. After their meal, they do some fun activity together. They go to the movies if something kid-friendly was playing, but if not, they go to the bowling alley or to the roller rink where Mom and Dad used to go on dates when they were in high school. Mom and Dad were great skaters, and Oswald was terrible, but they'd skate on either side of him, holding his hands to keep him up. They'd usually top off their evening with a waffle cone at the ice cream place downtown. Oswald and Mom would make fun of Dad because no matter what ice cream flavors were available, he always got vanilla. Since the mill closed down though, Family Fun Night had turned into an at-home affair. Mom would make something for dinner that was easy but festive, like tacos from a mix or hot dogs. They'd eat and then play board games or watch a movie they rented from Redbox. It was still fun, of course, but sometimes Oswald wished aloud for the old days of seeing new movies at the theater and having waffle cones after. And Dad had to remind them that the important thing was that they all got to spend time together. Sometimes when the weather was nice, they'd have a family fun night. They'd pack a picnic of cold cuts and salad courtesy of the snack space and head over to the state park. They'd eat their dinner at the wooden table and watch the squirrels and birds and raccoons. Afterwards, they go for a walk on one of the hiking trails. These outings were always a nice change, but Oswald was also aware of why these were the only family fun nights that they ever got out of the house. Picnics were free. Tonight they were staying in. Mom had made spaghetti and garlic bread. They had played a game of Clue, which Mom won as she usually did, and now they were piled up on the couch together in their pajamas with a huge bowl of popcorn between them, watching a remake of an old science fiction movie. Once the movie was over, Dad said, "Well, that was pretty good, but not as good as the real version." "What do you mean the real version?" Oswald said. "That was a real version." "Not really," Dad said. "I mean, it was set in the same universe as the real version, but it was kind of cheap knockoff of the one I came out when I was a kid." Dad always had to be so opinionated. He could never just watch something and enjoy it. "So the best movies are always the ones that you watch when you were a kid?" Oswald said. "Not always, but in this case, yes." Dad was settling in, Oswald could tell, for one of his favorite things, a good argument. "But the special effects in the original version stink," Oswald said. "All those puppets and rubber masks." "I'll take a puppet or a model over CGI any day," Dad said, leaning back on the couch, propping his feet on the coffee table. "That stuff is so slick and fake. It's got no warmth, no texture. And besides, you like those old Sandralix movies, and the special effects in those are terrible." "Yeah, but I just watched those to make fun of them," Oswald said, even though he really did think Sandralix was pretty cool. Mom came in from the kitchen with bowls of ice cream. Not as good as the waffle cone place, but nothing to turn your nose up at either. "Okay, if you guys don't cut it out the nerd argument, I'm going to pick the next movie we watch, and it's going to be a romantic comedy." Oswald and his dad shut up immediately. "That's about what I thought," Mom said, passing around the bowls of ice cream. As Oswald was lying in bed sketching his mechanical animals, his phone vibrated on the nightstand. There was only one person other than his parents who ever texted him. "Hey," Ben had typed on the screen. "Hey back," Oswald typed. "How's your summer?" "Awesome. At Myrtle Beach for vacation. It's so cool. Arcades and mini golf everywhere." "Jealous," Oswald typed, and he meant it. A beach with arcades and mini golf really did sound awesome. "Wish you were here," Ben typed. "Me too. How's your summer?" "Okay." Oswald texted. He was briefly tempted to make his summer sound cooler than it was, but he could never lie to Ben. "Been going to the library a lot. Lunch at Jeff's Pizza. That's all? It didn't sound pathetic compared with his family trip to the beach. He texted, pretty much, yeah. I'm sorry, Ben texted. And then, that pizza place is creepy. They chatted a little while longer, and although Oswald was happy to hear from Ben, he was also sad that his friend was so far away and having such a good time without him. Monday morning, and Oswald was in a bad mood. Even his mom's pancakes didn't help. In the car, Dad turned up the radio too loud. It was some stupid song about a tractor. Oswald reached for the knob and turned it down. Hey dude, driver picks the music, you know that. Dad said. He turned the awful sock back up even longer. It's bad music, Oswald said. I'm trying to save you from yourself. Well, I don't like those video game songs you listen to, Dad said. But I don't just barge into a room and turn them off. Yeah, Oswald said, but I don't force you to listen to them either. Dad turned the radio down. What's with the attitude, son? Whatever's bothering you. It's not just like I like country music. Oswald didn't feel like talking, but clearly he was being forced to. And once he opened his mouth, he was surprised to feel complaints erupting from him like lava from a volcano. I'm tired of every day being exactly the same, Ben texted me. Yesterday, he's at Myrtle Beach having an awesome time. He wanted to know what I was doing, and I told him I was going to the library and Jeff's Pizza every day. And you know what he texted back to me? I'm sorry, and that place is creepy. Dad sighed. I'm sorry we can't go on a vacation and have an awesome time. Things are hard right now where money's concerned. I'm sorry it affects you. You're a kid. You shouldn't have to worry about money. I'm hoping they'll move me to a full-time at the store in the fall. That'll help a lot. And if I get promoted to deli manager, it'll be another $1.50 an hour. Oswald knew he shouldn't say what he was about to say, but here he went anyway. Ben's dad got a job that pays even better than his old job at the mill. Dad tightening his grip on the steering wheel. Yeah, well, and Dad's Ben had to move 500 miles away to get that job. His voice sounded tight as his grip on the wheel, and Oswald could tell his jaw had clenched. Your mom and I talked a lot about it, but we decided not to move, especially with your grandma living here needing some help sometimes. This is our home, kiddo, and things aren't perfect, but we just have to make the best of them. Oswald felt himself crossing the line from grumbling into grounding territory. But why did some people get the best of everything and others had to settle for free library visits and cheap pizza? And so every day you toss me out on the street like garbage. If this is the best of things, I hate to see the worst. Now, son, don't you think that's a little dramatic? Oswald didn't stick around to hear the rest of his dad's criticism. He got out of the car and slammed the door. His dad sped away, probably glad to get rid of him. Just as he predicted, the library still didn't have the book he wanted. He flipped through a few magazines, the kind with exotic jungle animals, which he usually liked, but they weren't doing much for him today. When his turn came for the computer, he put in his earbuds and watched some YouTube videos, but he wasn't in a good enough mood to laugh. At lunchtime, he sat in Jeff's Pizza with his slice and soda. Every day, a cheese slice. If his dad wasn't so stingy, he'd give him another $1 so he could have pepperoni or sausage. But no, it had to be the cheapest pizza you could get. Sure, money was tight, but really, was another $1 a day going to break the bank? Looking around the place, Oswald decided Ben was right. Jeff's Pizza was creepy. There were those shadowy painted over figures on the wall, the dusty abandoned ball pit, and when he thought about it, Jeff was kind of creepy too. He looked 100 years old, but he was probably just 30, with those heavy lidded bloodshot eyes, the stained apron, and the slow speech and movement. He was like a zombie pizza chef. Oswald thought about his argument with Dad that morning. Soon Dad would be texting him, expecting him to come outside to the car. Well, today was going to be different. Today Dad would have to come and find them. There was one perfect place to hide. Oswald was going into the pit. The pit was pretty gross, really. Obviously untouched for years, the plastic spheres were covered in gray, fuzzy dust. But hiding there would be a great prank on his dad. His dad, who was always dropping him off and picking him up like nobody's dry cleaning, would actually have to get out of the car and make an effort for a change. Oswald wouldn't make it easy for him either. Oswald took off his shoes. Yes, the ball pit was disgusting, but at least getting into it would make today different from all the days he had come before it. He climbed into the pit and felt the balls parting to make room for his body. He moved his arms and legs. It was a little like swimming, if you could swim in a dry plastic spheres. He found his footing at the bottom of the pit. Some of the balls were strangely sticky, but he tried not to think about why. If he was going to trick his dad, he was going to have to go all the way under. He took a deep breath, and if he were about to jump into a swimming pool, and fell to his knees. That put him up to his neck. Wiggling around so he was sitting on the pit's floor, put his head under too. The balls spread far apart so that he could breathe, but it was dark and made him feel claustrophobic. The place stank of dust and mildew. Pink eye. He could hear his mother's voice saying, "You're going to get pink eye." The smell really was getting to him. The dust tickled his nose. He felt a sneeze coming on, but he couldn't move his hand through his fears fast enough to reach his nose and muffle it. He sneezed 3 times, each one louder than the one before. Oswald didn't know if his dad was looking for him yet, but if he was, the sneezing ball pit was probably given away his location. Besides, it was too dark and gross in there. He had to come up for air. As he rose, his ears were assaulted by the sound of beeping electronics and yelling and laughing kids. It took a few seconds for his eyes to adjust from the darkness of the pit to the brightness that now surrounded him, the flashing lights and vivid colors. He looked around and muttered, "Toto, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore."
Wait a minute! Who are you?
Sorry guys, I just had to I didn't know how to end it. So actually, as I was reading, my computer bugged out and I don't know, I apparently was reading for like 20 more minutes and nothing got recorded, so that's terrible. But I guess we can end it right here in this really weird happening. I don't know what else to call it, but yeah, this really weird event taking place, going on, whatever you want to call it. But you know, it's not that bad. And for some reason, my computer keeps on bugging out. It keeps on cutting off, so I'm just gonna cut this short. It's interesting. I dig it. Nothing too crazy so early, so I haven't been too dramatic. But maybe in the next time we come around, it'll be much better, much spookier. Just what we want from a good horror story, don't we? Now, keep your eyes peeled, for I will be uploading this next part soon. And as always, don't forget to hit that like, subscribe for more, comment what you think will happen, and catch you in the next one.